What seeded that thought in your head to actually go and spend 6 months in a township in South Africa?
I sometimes ask myself the same question. I was in a personal development seminar, and the seminar was all about community. It was called the Landmark Advanced course. It was all about creating community and living as part of a community. For many people in the Western world, I certainly know myself, I grew up in an environment where there wasn't a lot of community. And the premise of this course was, unless you're making a difference and giving back to a community, life kind of becomes meaningless. And if you can make your life about making a difference, and once you've kind of transcended just looking out for yourself, the next level is making a difference and looking out for others, life starts to get a lot better. And I was depressed before I went into this course. I just hit the top of my game. I was a #1 hit music producer in South Africa. I just had a #1 hit, top of the chart for 6 weeks. My phone was ringing off the hook with people wanting to work with me. And that had been my lifelong dream, was to be a successful musician. And I got there and I still wasn't happy. And I was actually severely depressed. I just felt like life had no meaning and there was no point. And so I went to this course to kind of solve my depression, I guess, hoping to find something. And on the first day of the course, I sat in my seat like this, very much skeptical of what the course leader was saying, and going, hang on, this is not about me, this is about community. I want to stop being depressed, you know, I'm not interested in community. And as the course progressed, the guy David, who was leading the course, started speaking about how apartheid in South Africa is still alive and well, except it's just gone underground. But in the mindsets of people, apartheid is still alive and well. It may not be legal anymore, but it's still there. And he asked us to take responsibility for the role that we'd played in apartheid. Now I sat there going, what do you mean you want me to take responsibility for the role that I played in apartheid? I didn't play a role in apartheid. I was at school at the time. What are you talking about? And like my internal dialogue was like, Mrr! And he slowly started to reveal what was a profound revelation to me, that by virtue of the fact that I did nothing to stop apartheid, I played a part in keeping it in place.
Even though you were thinking way back to when you were 7 years old?
No, I wasn't 7. I mean, at school I was like 16, 17. So I certainly was old enough to recognize it and at least stand up for it. But I didn't. I would drive past the beaches and see the fence dividing the beach in half with a beautiful white sandy beach for white people and a little rocky corner for black people.
Wow.
I would drive past, we had, when I was much younger, we had black and white buses. So black people on one bus, white people on another bus. During the state of emergency, black people weren't allowed in the streets after 7 o'clock at night. So we had a live-in nanny who raised me, or certainly raised part of my, was involved with part of me being raised, and that came out completely wrong. She when my mom was at work, she looked after me, right? And I remember we had to get her permission to be out of the streets after 7 o'clock. If she wanted to go visit somebody or we wanted to take her out, we had to get a little written permission from the government.
That's an extraordinary thought, being here in the UK.
Yeah, I know.
That's just extraordinary.
So the insight I had was, okay, well, I didn't actually stop it, so therefore I played a part in keeping it in place, if you're going to look at it like that. And so he started to ask the audience, what are you committed to doing to make up for the role that you've all played in apartheid? Because only until you've made up for it and you're complete with it will you be able to authentically go out there and have a relationship with African people and a powerful relationship with your country. Otherwise you're always going to be feeling guilt in the back of your mind, or separation, or whatever the case may be. And so everyone was standing up, and one guy stood up and said how he had beaten somebody up when he was in the military service and how guilty he felt, and he stood up in front of the audience and spoke to, I think there were 10 black people in the actual seminar, and spoke to them on behalf of the entire black community in Africa and apologized them for having beaten up this guy, and it was very moving and tears streaming, and I'm sitting in my seat going, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I jumped out of my seat at one point, getting so frustrated, and said, I'm not getting this course, help. And I got up the microphone, come up the front of the room, and I knew I was in trouble, because this guy, there was no messing with him. And he basically uncovered that I was depressed, and he said to me, so what role did you play in apartheid? I said I didn't. He said, well, consider that you did by the virtue of the fact that you Didn't do anything about it. I eventually got that. He said, what do you want to do to make up for it? I said, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sponsor 3 or 4 black people to come to the seminar because it's clearly making a difference. And he said, that's great, good for you. That's going to make you feel good for a day or two, but it's certainly not going to change your life. And we're in the business of changing lives. And he said to me, what do you think? He says to me, how many black people do you know, Bruce? So I lied because I was too embarrassed to admit that I didn't know any. I said, I know 3. As friends. I had many acquaintances, but I didn't have any black friends. And he says, so you mean to tell me that in a country of 40 million black African people, you only know 3 of them? And I was like, uh-huh. And like the whole audience, you can hear a pin drop now. The room's silent, and I'm going, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. So he says, well, would you be interested in getting to know your culture then? Don't you think it's a bit ridiculous? And I was like, yeah, it is ridiculous. Especially considering I call myself a New South African, which is a term in South Africa after apartheid ended and we had the new government come in with Nelson Mandela and the ANC. We started calling ourselves New South Africans. We were in the New South Africa, we were New South Africans, apartheid was dead. Well, that was what we told ourselves, at least anyway. And I could see what a hypocrite I was. Here I was calling myself a New South African, but in fact I didn't have any black friends. So he said to me, what do you think the best way is to get to know black people? So I said, I don't know. And somebody in the audience shouts out, go live with them! He said, that's a good idea. Why don't you go and live with them? And I said, you've got to be crazy. Thank you very much. And went and sat down on my seat and kind of hid in my seat. And feeling completely defeated, because I'm the kind of guy who rises to a challenge. But the idea of going to live in an African township or shanty town was just way beyond me. I didn't know anybody who had never even heard of anybody, a white person who had ever done that before. I mean, these are places where, as white people, we were told to believe this is where all the crime happens. You're going to get murdered if you go in there. You don't want to go anywhere near. You drive far away because that's where all the black people are. And of course, in South Africa, the black people were always responsible for all the crime, right? When we locked our doors in our cars, we weren't trying to keep white people from hijacking us. We knew very well that it was only going to be a black man who was going to hijack us. So in the back of my mind, there's all this racial prejudice and conditioning that I'm not even aware of that's running my life. And I'm starting to see this sitting in the seat going, oh my God, I just got defeated. I went up there and I was challenged and I backed down. And it really annoyed me. And I went home that evening. And at the time I was living in this beautiful 3-story mansion with a lovely 25-meter swimming pool. I was house sitting in this beautiful house for this very, very wealthy couple. And living free of rent. Just below Table Mountain with a view of the whole of Table Bay. It was heaven. You couldn't have asked for a nicer place to live. And the next morning on my way back to day 3 of the course, my landlady came to me before I went to the course and she said to me, Bruce, I need to have a quick word with you. Have you got a few moments? I said, sure. She says, I'm going traveling for 6 months. And I've decided, because I'm going for such a long time, I'm actually going to lock up the house. And I no longer need you to house sit anymore because it's just pointless using up electricity for 6 months. I'm just going to lock up the whole house. So I said, okay, fine. And I'd been living there for like 2 or 3 months. So I thought to myself, isn't that interesting? Yesterday I'm challenged to move out and go and live in a township. Today I'm being told I have to move out of my house. Maybe this is the universe signaling me that I actually need to take this up and go and live in a township. So I went back to day 3 of the course, and it was a 4-day course, and I found some of the African people in the audience and asked them how, if I ever wanted to live in a township, how I'd go about doing that. They said, no problem, we'll sort it out for you, we'll get you a house, no problem, next week we'll go. Oh, no, don't do that, don't just yet. They were all keen to have me, and I was like, no, let me just think about it. And so that was on Saturday, and then on Tuesday evening we had a completion evening, and we could invite our friends along to the course to come and find out and share with them what we'd gotten out of the course. And then it was an amazing course. And I stood up in front of 500 people that evening and said, this is what I got out of the Landmark Advanced course. I got to see that I was a racist and that I was really prejudiced, and I'm committed to overcoming that. So you can count on me that in a month's time I will be living in an African township and I'll go live there for a month. And the crowd went wild. Wow! Huge applause. I felt like a rock star. I was like, this is just like music, except I don't have a guitar on my neck. It's the same feeling. And I walked off stage and went, oh crap, what have I just committed to? And my mother's looking at me, and my father's looking at me, and they're not sure whether to be proud or terrified. They don't know what to say. And everybody's patting me on the back, going, "Oh, it's amazing, it's incredible, let us know how it goes." And I knew that that was the only way to get me there. If I stood up there on stage and declared it publicly in front of 500 people, then there was no squirming out, there was no turning back, and I would have to go. And the next 2 days were terrifying for me, just dealing with what I'd committed to. I wanted to back out 100 times. I was so nervous, so petrified of going to live as the only white man amongst 100,000 black people.
What were some of your fears at that point?
What if I'm not accepted? What if the community don't accept me? What if I get mugged, and what if I get beaten up? What if I get murdered? What if I get stabbed? What if... there was just one big what if. I didn't know, what if my car gets stolen? Where am I going to park my car? What if I have to live in a shack, right, made out of tin, with a bed made out of, I don't know, just a mattress on the floor and a little fireplace to keep me warm at night, with no lock on the door, and a toilet that's a kilometre walk down the road? What if that? And how would my life look? What if I was the only person with a car in the entire area? All these unknowns. And cutting a long story short, my wife had a clever idea. She said to me, "Honey, why don't you get somebody to come with you? In fact, why don't you get your friend Nick to go with you for the first week? Because Nick's a white guy and he speaks Xhosa, which is the local African language." And I thought, what a brilliant idea. So I phoned up Nick. I said, "Nick, how would you like to come with me?" And he was like, "Let me think about it. I'll get back to you. I'm not sure yet. I just got to see what's going on." And he wasn't keen at all. But he eventually said yes. And he moved in about 2 days after I did. And 2 weeks later, I got a call from one of the ladies in the course. She said, "I found you a place to stay. It's 1,000 Rand a month." Right. The irony was I was living free of charge in a mansion in Cape Town. Now I'm moving to a shanty town for paying 1,000 Rand a month, which is what, it's about 100 quid a month for this house. But I arrived to go look at the house, and I was so relieved. It was a brick house. It had walls. It actually had 3 bedrooms. It was completely dilapidated, but it had 3 bedrooms nonetheless, and there was some space. I walked in to be greeted by about 50 cockroaches running across the floor. Mold all over the ceiling, the shower full of mold. The carpet smelled of damp. It was a hole, but it was a home, and it had walls, and that was more important. And it had a garage for my car, and a little garage for my car. And it was in an area called the Kak Yard, and Kak is Afrikaans for crap, so it means the crap yard, and it was named the crap yard, this area, because of all the crime and all the crap people who hung out there. It was one of the most crime-ridden areas in the whole of the township a few years prior. And so I was a little bit nervous about that. And 2 days later, I moved in. So 2 weeks after standing up on stage in front of 500 people, and after my course, I was living in Guguletu. That was the name of the township, Guguletu. And please feel free to ask me any questions, interrupt me as I'm going. And I'll never forget that day driving in. I had a pickup truck, and my dad had a pickup truck, and we loaded all my boxes, all my belongings, other than my recording studio, which was in my office in town, into the back of my pickup truck, and drove in, and my dad drove in, and we pulled up into NY13. And NY13 is the name of the street. And during the apartheid regime, they built the townships for the black people to live in, and they didn't bother giving the road names. They just gave them numbers. And NY stands for Native Yard. So this was the yard where they threw the natives, right? And so as they built roads, they numbered them. So NY1 could be 5 kilometers away, NY2 might be over there, NY3 might be... There's no sequence to the roads. So you'd assume NY3 would lead into NY4. No, it doesn't. Anyway, I was in NY13, number 6. And we pulled up outside, and I got out, and a few curious faces, and this was about a Monday morning, so there were some people that were at work. It was quite quiet, and a few curious faces looked at me and my father and wondered what the hell these 2 white people were doing in the township, looking like they had boxes in the back of their truck, and they were unloading something. And then my dad and I were looking at each other going, oh, I hope we're safe. And we had, right there was like the moment of truth. We had to face all our prejudices right there.
Yes.
And they all came up in an instant. Suddenly it was like being in a war zone. We were ready to run for our lives or to fight for our lives we were ready, as much as we were coming with an open heart, at the same time, it was like, this is completely foreign and unknown, It's like we'd be living in the worst part of a ghetto in the States. So we start unloading the boxes into the house, and within about 5 minutes there's 25 or so black people standing in a circle around the car, staring incredulously at us, completely confused and having no idea why we're there. They're just going, what are these two white people doing moving boxes into that house? And my dad and I are getting more and more nervous. And eventually one of the ladies, Maureen, who I later found out was my next door neighbor, came up to me and she said, Umlungu, which means whitey in Xhosa. She says, Umlungu, what are you doing here? And I could have answered a number of answers, and I thought, I'm just going to tell the truth. One of the possibilities I created in this course was being honest. And I said to her, listen, I'm moving in. And she says, well, why are you moving in? I said, well, I'm moving in because I'm terrified of black people, and because I don't understand anything about African culture, and I want to find out more about my own culture. And she just shook her head like this, and wow. Her mind was whirring with this concept, and she then translated it into Xhosa for the people who were standing around, and the looks on their faces were just sheer disbelief. It was like, hold on. And then they were trying to grapple with this concept of a white guy admitting that he was a racist and coming to conquer his fear and moving into their community. And I found out later some of them were convinced that I was secret police who'd come to infiltrate the drug dealings that were going on and the illegal alcohol sales that were going on in the area. But anyway, then she says to me, can we help you carry your boxes then? And at this point, all my conditioning comes up, and another voice in my head says, oh shit, if I say yes, they're going to steal them. Because they're poor, right? They got nothing. And I've got a television and a hi-fi, and I've got clothes, and I'm thinking to myself, if I say no, they're going to reject me from the community. And that's not a great way to be welcomed. So I took a deep breath and went, okay. And they proceeded to carry all my boxes into my house, and not one of them had stolen. And what ensued was the most incredible 4 hours. We had the biggest welcome party I've ever experienced. They welcomed me like a prodigal son returning home. There was music playing, there was food that got delivered in, they rushed, my house was full to the brim, 30 people in the house, partying, beer in hand, beer in my hand, just shoved a beer into my hand, drink, celebration, welcome to our community, if there's anything we can do for you, if you need anything, come and ask us, we'll look after you, we'll keep you safe, don't worry, we'll look after you. It was amazing, it was absolutely amazing, and I'm going, thank God. I remember walking out my garage into the street, and in slow motion seeing these two big black African, what we would call mamas, right, like mothers, and they had breasts hanging down to their knees, bouncing up and down in slow motion as they sprinted down the road shouting Umlungu, Umlungu, which means whitey, whitey, like sounding the alarm. There's a white guy in the area, there's a white guy in the area. And I'm standing in the street, and they come running up to me and almost knock me over with this huge embrace. Boom! Welcome, welcome! I'm like so overwhelmed, I don't know what to do with myself. And the Bush Telegraph has kind of spread the news like wildfire that the white guys moved into the area. And after about 4 hours, I was so overwhelmed, I actually locked the door and locked everybody out. I was like, enough. I couldn't take it anymore. It was too much. And I went and I slept, and I just passed out. One of the scariest nights of sleep of my life, because behind my bedroom, was a shebeen. And a shebeen is an illegal bar, and people, because they're so poor, people start illegal bars in their front lounge or in their bedrooms, and they'll come around and they'll take all the furniture out and they'll sit around on beer crates and they'll make a fire in the middle of the room, and they'll drink beer, and they sell what we call quarts, which are beers that are this big. I mean, it's like 500 milliliters of beer, half liter of beer. And, 750, they're 750, they're like almost a liter of beer. And adjacent to my wall, on the other side of my wall, was a shebeen. And so there was this party and racket going on with all these black voices and black accents and in African accents and in a language I didn't understand, and people drunk, and I'm trying to sleep, and I'm at the same time so overwhelmed by being in this place. It was a terrible night's sleep, and I woke up the next morning too scared to open the front door, not knowing what I would find outside, not knowing what happens now. Do I just run off to work? But then I thought, no, that's pointless, because I came here to be with the community. I could just escape and run off to work, but that wouldn't serve anybody or make any difference.
So you were working elsewhere at the time?
I had a recording studio in the centre of Cape Town, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I would drive in every day to the recording studio. And I went and sat outside on the kind of what we would call the stoep, which is the patio of the house, and ate my breakfast to watching the street activity go by in that morning. And a little school kid walked past me on his way to school. He must have been 6 years old, with a school blazer on, head down, just kind of walking along to school. And as he walked past me, he looked left and looked at me, and you could see the kind of the double take as he saw a white guy sitting out there eating breakfast. And he stopped dead in his tracks in the middle of the road. And he looked at me. He paused for a moment, and he said the most profound thing. He said to me, "Do you live here?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Welcome home."
Oh my God.
And then he just carried on walking and walked away. And I just burst into tears streaming down my face. And he was right, it was home. It had become, and was becoming, home. And he was almost saying, "Welcome to Africa, welcome to your roots, welcome home." I mean, I don't know what he meant, what he thought he was saying, but that's how I took it. I was like, "Welcome to Africa, welcome to your real home." Real home's not in the city there with the white people sitting with electric fences around their houses up on a hill. This is real Africa, And that was a profound moment for me, a real touching moment. And Nick came and stayed with me, my friend who spoke Xhosa. And he was a huge hit, because he was a white guy who spoke their language, which is very rare. And he had a ball, and he left after about 2 weeks. And after about a month, a friend of mine, about 3 weeks, a friend of mine came to me and she said, "Would you like me to interview you?" Because she worked for a newspaper, the big newspaper in Cape Town called the Argus. And I said, "Sure, you can interview me." So she came around and she interviewed me, and she interviewed some of the people around. And a week later, it was Freedom Day on the 1st of April, which celebrates South Africa being free. I think it was the day when Nelson Mandela got free from prison, and I think it's the 1st of April is Freedom Day. And I don't know where I was on Freedom Day, but I went into town. It was a public holiday, so I went in to see my family. And I drove past the newspaper billboard which says, "White man moves to African township." I was like, huh.
Must be you.
Must be me. So I stopped at the local petrol station to put petrol in my car, and the black petrol attendants come running up to me saying, "You're the guy from the paper, you live in Guguletu." I'm like, "Yes, what paper?" So I go inside, I'm on the front page of the newspaper. There's a big picture of me sitting there, and my old house and the new house, like before and after pics. And the headline was my Ghetto Liberation move. And they used me as an example of what's possible in the new South Africa. And being Freedom Day, it was the perfect article to go out on Freedom Day. And suddenly the radio stations were calling, and the media was calling, and I spent the next week doing interview after interview after interview. And which was fun and interesting, and I started to realize that I had the opportunity here to make a really big difference.
Yes.
Because people were calling in on the radio interviews going, "I'm so inspired by what you've done, that's just amazing. How do we get involved? Can we come and stay with you?" I made the mistake of giving out my telephone number on air. And some people came and stayed with me for a week or two at a time. I had about 5 or 6 people during the course of the time I was there stay with me. And I committed to staying there for 1 month. So at this point, it was almost exactly a month that the article had come out. And I couldn't leave. I just couldn't bring myself to leave. Having now had all the publicity, here I was, the hero, or being made up by the press to be the hero, who just moved to the township. I couldn't suddenly now leave.
So was that because you were getting the press, or was that?
That was part of it. Yes, the press was certainly a part of keeping me there, because I started to realize, not because I was interested in getting publicity, but because I realized I was making a difference.
Oh, okay.
Through the publicity, I was making a difference. It was inspiring other people to do the same, and they were saying, "I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it." And I got letters written to me and emails to me. And I mean, it was this huge thing. And for a week, I was a celebrity. And I realized just by living there, I'm showing the country what other people can do. And to be honest, I didn't want to leave. I was having such a good time. I didn't. It would have felt wrong. I felt like I'd just begun this journey. It was just starting, and I'd just been given my first Xhosa name. I was named Xolani. I went to a football match with one of the local teams. They had shebeen teams, and each shebeen, each illegal bar, had its regulars, and these regulars made up their team, and they would play football every weekend. They'd play soccer. And I went to watch one of these football matches, and this one guy comes up to me and says, "You need a Xhosa name. From now on, you are Xolani." I was like, "Xolani? What does Xolani mean?" He said, "It means bringer of peace." So I was like, "Wow, I like that name. Thank you."
That's fantastic.
And from then on, I stopped calling myself Bruce. I said, I would start introducing myself to people in Xhosa. I'd say, "Igama lam Xolani," which means my name is Bruce, instead of my name is Xolani, instead of my name is Bruce, right? And I started introducing myself in Xhosa. I started learning some of the language, and in the township I became Xolani. Although my city friends would still call me Bruce, but in the township I was known as Xolani now, and that made me feel even more at home, and had some really moving experiences. I remember Maureen, my next door neighbor, we became very close, and she ran the shebeen next door. And one night, Nick and I decided, this was in our first 2 weeks of being there, that we wanted to go to another shebeen on the other side of town. One of the locals had said, "Let me take you out. I'll take you out for a party," and he took us in his beaten up old car, and we drove through a very dangerous area to the other side of town where there was the shebeen, about 2 kilometers away. And we were there for about 2 hours when Maureen arrived. And I was like, "What are you doing here, Maureen?" She says, "I just came to make sure you're okay." "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm great." I said, "How did you get here?" Something She says, "No, I walked." I said, "You walked 2 kilometers through one of the most dangerous areas in Guguletu in the middle of the night just to come check that I was okay?" She's like, "Uh-huh." And she said, "Okay, see you later." I said, "Who's looking after the shebeen?" She said, "My mother." It's like, "Thank you. And as long as you're having a good time, you just look after yourself, stay safe, don't sleep with any of the girls, they've all got AIDS," or something like that. And she turned around and she walked back another 2 kilometers in the middle of the night. And that was so touching. They cared enough to really want to protect me. And I felt so welcome in the community. And for the first time, I started to experience what community was about. See, as a white South African growing up, we grew up with electric fences around the house, separate from our neighbours. A lot of us didn't even know the names of our neighbours, and I know it's like that in the UK too.
Yeah.
I can tell you my next door neighbour's name, but I don't know the one next door,
So I'm really interested that you're white, and that they didn't, from what you're saying, they didn't treat you any differently. I mean, apart from the fact they recognised that you were white, but it seems that they really embraced you into their community. And I just wonder, I'm quite certain that if a black person had then gone to live in a white community, it wouldn't have been that way around.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, why do you think that is?
I was authentic. I told the truth, and I was brutally honest. I told them, "Listen, I'm terrified of you. And I've come here to conquer my fear of black people and to get into my culture." So I was honest and authentic the whole way through the whole experience. And they got that. And they realized I wasn't there just some tourist coming to observe them. I actually wanted to live with them and be a part of them and be a part of their community. I wasn't there just to live there and live another life somewhere else. No, I actually lived and spent my weekends hanging out. I drank with them in the shebeen next door. I helped some of them. I led seminars to them. I had them round for dinner. They had me round for dinner. I was at their birthday parties. I became a part of the community. Secondly, it was incredibly, there was a lot of poverty. And I think poverty brings communities together and gels communities too, in a way that perhaps wealth doesn't. You know, when you live in poverty, you have to rely on your community because you can't survive on your own.
Yes.
You have to have a community to look after each other. So, in a sense, living in such a poor area was the perfect thing. I mean, the universe couldn't have put me in a better place to experience community because the community was so tightly bonded. They policed themselves. I'll tell you a story. I got mugged one night. So I was there for 6 months, and only one of those only ever got mugged once, and that was the biggest fear of me, was I was going to get attacked, and I was going to get stabbed, or I was going to get robbed, or something was going to happen like that. Because those are the kind of things that do go on in the townships. And being the only white guy there, clearly I was a target. And in their minds, I was rich. I had a car. You know, I had a business. I had nice clothes. I had a nice cell phone. You know, I was wealthy in their minds. And there was no distinction between them. They didn't realize that just because at the time I was successful didn't mean that, you know, my overheads were at work were just as high. You know, as the irony is that often the more you earn, the more you spend. And so I didn't have a hell of a lot of disposable income. But anyway, one night I come home about 1 o'clock in the morning. It's pouring with rain. My house didn't have a front door. I had to open the garage, drive my car in, and get into the house through the garage. The garage was kind of like the garage door that lifted up as the front door. And I opened up the garage, got out the car, had to walk around the car, back outside again, back around the other side of the car to get in the house. And as I walked outside, these two drunk guys came up to me, or they pretended to be drunk. They were leering, and they were kind of, "Hey, can we have a cigarette? Can we have a cigarette?" I was like, "I don't have any cigarettes for you." And before I knew what had happened, they had grabbed my cell phone out of my pocket. And the one guy put his hand on his belt, and he said, "If you come chasing us, we'll shoot you. Don't come chasing us, we'll shoot you." And this all happened so fast. And I had my whole life on that phone. It was a little like PDA phone at the time. It was one of those Nokia phones with a keyboard that you could type on. And all my contacts were there, my emails were there, and everything was there because I had no computer out in Guguletu. So this was my email machine and my internet surfing and everything. And I was like, if I lose that phone, I'm buggered, I'm screwed. I need to get that phone back. And something in my mind said to me, it's safe, chase them, they don't have a gun. They're just bluffing. And in the middle of the night, I went sprinting down the road after them, shouting, "Help! Help!" trying to kind of rally some help up. And bearing in mind that I'd never been in a fight in my life before. I'd never played rugby. As a kid, I was a little nerd with big, thick glasses. I spent my school breaks in the computer room, my lunch breaks in the computer room. And here I was sprinting after these guys. And at this point, I did my first ever rugby tackle. I leaped, when I eventually caught up with the guy on my phone, leaped around, put my arms around his waist and brought him to the ground. And then I didn't know what to do next. I was like, now what? So I started punching him. It's like, give me my phone, give me my phone. And I'm punching him in the side. He's lying face down on the floor. I'm lying on top of him, punching him, trying to grab the phone from his arm. Now his buddy jumps to my back, and he's got one hand between my legs squeezing my balls to try and get me off him, and the other hand around my neck trying to choke me. And I'm help! And punching, and it's pouring down, buckling down with rain in the middle of the 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just waiting for a gunshot to go off, and that's the end or something, you know. But the adrenaline's pumping, and there's no ways they're gonna get my phone, and I'm determined. I'm like, not a chance. And what felt like an eternity, but was probably about 30 seconds later, I hear yells and footsteps and grunts, and the guy on my back kind of gives way and falls to the side, and I look up, and there's my next door neighbor's brother, Maureen's brother, and his name's Umzero, and Umzero came through, and he'd heard me screaming for help. He was asleep in bed, and he put on his shoes and a shirt and came running down the road. He's a big guy, and he just beat the shit out of these guys. He really did. And he basically told them, if you come back into this area, if we find you here again, we'll kill you. And that was that.
And they meant that.
And they meant that, yeah, absolutely. They policed themselves because there's so much crime going on. There's not enough police to handle all the crime that's going on. And so they policed themselves. And he pulled me up off the ground and handed me my phone, and he said, "You idiot. What the hell were you thinking?" And that day earned me infinite respect in the community.
Wow.
When the word spread that the white guy had gone and beaten up his muggers and and actually got and chased them and got his phone back, they were like, okay, nobody's going to mess with this guy anymore. Like, that put me on a whole different level of respect, and suddenly I was in. From then on I was in. I was like, okay, he means business, and because I don't know how to describe this without actually making it sound incorrect, and the poverty had made, and apartheid had made these people victims. They were such victims. It got to the point where I felt like I was being leeched. I was being sapped dry by a lot of the community, begging for money every single day. I couldn't leave the house without them asking for money for beer, for asking me to give them a job, even though I had no space to employ, for asking me to pay for their education, like every day. And it was just like, in the beginning, for the first week, I gave people money. I didn't know any better, and I gave them R1 here, R2 here, R3 there. And at the end of the week, news had spread like wildfire. The bank had just moved into town, and everybody was asking me for money. And I realized, hang on, this is actually not working, because they're just going to spend the money on drugs or on beer. And there was a huge drug problem in the area, and alcohol problem, because a lot of people were unemployed, and they had nothing better to do than sit around all day, and there was just nothing better to do with life. So why not check out with alcohol and drugs? And so I decided I wasn't going to give anybody any more money, but I couldn't live with not giving them anything. I'd come here to contribute. I didn't want to just be there to take. And I thought, well, if I'm not giving them money, perhaps I could just teach them how to make money. I'd always been good as an entrepreneur. I thought, so next time somebody comes and asks for money, I'm going to say to them, listen, I'm not going to give you any money, because I'm not giving anybody in Guguletu any more money, because all that happens is you guys spend it on beer or something. And even if you tell me you spend it on food, I find you and there should be spending it on beer afterwards. But if you want to learn how to make your own money, come and have a chat with me, and we'll have a talk, and I'll teach you what I know, and maybe help you start a business or something, or get a job, or whatever the case may be. And over the course of 6 months, I must have said this to 300 people. And you want to know how many people took me up my offer?
How many?
One.
Oh my God.
One. In 6 months, only one person said yes. And that was a young man called Patrick Monaketsi, and Patrick wanted to get a job in IT. He is very interested in computers, but he didn't have a computer, and he wanted me to buy him a computer. I said, absolutely not. I am not buying you anything. You are not a victim. If you want to be successful in business, you need to stand up on your own 2 feet and realize what's possible. But so he said to me, won't you send an email out to your friends asking them if they have any spare computers? So I said, I can do that. Now you're starting to think like an entrepreneur. So I sent out an email to my friends saying, anybody got any spare computers or spare computer parts? And within 5 days we had enough parts to build 2 computers. And we did. And I knew how to build computers, so I taught them how to build computers. And somebody gave us an old monitor, somebody gave us a hard drive, somebody gave us a keyboard and a mouse, and we had the whole thing. And we built him 2 computers, and I said, here you go, there are your 2 computers. And he started, I think he probably sold one of them, and he started working on the second one, teaching himself computers and learning how to do it. And then he went and got himself an IT job. And through his experience on the computer that we had raised for him, he got himself an IT job. And last I heard, he's still doing very well and very successful, and he had that entrepreneurial mindset. But what happened to the rest of them? And when I left Guguletu after 6 months, I still wasn't really clear why I had been there.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the purpose was, why had the universe thrown me in there. I was no longer depressed. I mean, after about a day of being there, I was no longer depressed. My depression was cured, right? I had a huge sense of community and a huge respect for and a huge love for community, a huge love for these people, and a huge love for Africa that I never had when I walked in. And I have many more stories I could tell you along the way, and maybe we'll get some of those later. But at the end, I wondered why I was there. And I didn't find out for a long time until I started studying how the mind works. And I started, all I knew was I wanted to make a difference there. I wanted to go back and make some kind of difference, and I had left feeling real compassion for what these people were going through, and also real frustration that I'd gone there, I wanted to make a difference, and although I had made a massive difference, I felt like I hadn't, because I wasn't able to help anybody with the business side of things and help them get out of their poverty. what I didn't realize was that I helped them in ways that I would never, I still probably don't even realize. When I arrived on that first day, they were just as terrified of me as I was of them.
Oh my God.
They were just as terrified. Here I was a white guy. I was the perpetrator, and they were the victims, right? I was the guy who was represented apartheid, who represented all the struggle they'd been through. I was the enemy, and here I was moving into their community, and for a lot of them, they were very skeptical of me for the first couple of months. They didn't trust me. Didn't help that I arrested my next door neighbor's son after 3 weeks of being there. I found him in the back of a friend of mine's car, parked outside the house, stealing. And this friend of mine who was visiting me actually was a police officer. And he called the police and he arrested this kid. And Maureen came up to me and said, just arrest him. He needs to go to jail. He needs to learn his lesson. And Maureen's mother came up and said, Bruce, how can you do this? We've welcomed you into our community and now you're arresting my grandson. How can you do this? She was irate. And I was at a choice there going, what do I do? Do I let this kid go and he doesn't learn his lesson? Or do I do the right thing and call the police and this kid goes and learns his lesson? And so I stuck to my guns. I knew I needed to set an example there and then. And I called the police and they came about an hour later. So we were standing holding him for an hour so he wouldn't run away. I had to keep this kid hostage for an hour, captive. My friend and I. It was terrible. We actually, and he tried to run several times and we caught him up. And the police came along and they took him away. And he spent a few months in jail. And when I was back in Guguletu 6 months ago, every time I go to South Africa, I go back and visit. Maureen actually said to me, I asked him how he was, and Maureen said to me, he's so much better, thank you. It's the best thing you could have ever done, sending him to jail. He learned his lesson, he won't do that again. He's grown up now and he won't do that again. So those are kind of some of the things I faced. But when I left, what I was saying is that I didn't know why I'd been there, and I'd had this frustrating experience not being able to make a difference with the people I really wanted to make a difference with. And I started learning how the mind works. I started learning particularly about mental programming and belief systems and how they drive all our actions. And I realized through the apartheid years, the African people of South Africa had been so conditioned to believe that they were third-class citizens. In fact, they were third-class citizens by law. Third-class citizens were black Africans. Second-class citizens were what we call coloureds, which are mixed-race people. So they may be Indians, they may be Asians. We also have a community called the Cape Coloureds. And first-class citizens were white people. So you couldn't get lower than a black person. Coloured people thought they were way superior to black people, but would want to be white people, often wanting to be white people. That was kind of like the experience of it. And white people were the superior race during the apartheid years, right? And coloured people got a lesser, didn't get such a hard time as black people, interestingly enough. So we had this whole hierarchy of kind of pecking order of race. And I realized that as a black person, having grown up seeing white people driving cars, nice cars, black people walking, and coloured people driving beaten up cars, you kind of realize and you start to believe subconsciously that, well, there must be something wrong with me, or I'm not deserving of being wealthy, because all I've ever seen is black people being poor and white people being wealthy. So white people are the people with the money, black people are the poor people. That's just the subconscious program that goes in there. Shoot. Then what about in terms of jobs? White people have the nice jobs, black people are labourers, right? White people seem to be running the country, black people seem to be involved in crime. And you'd grow up there with the subconscious conditioning, and it would be no wonder that when I came along and say, how would you like to start a business and make your own money and be an entrepreneur and be successful in life? They go, yeah, and they never pitch up.
Yeah.
They never come to do anything about it, because their self-image is that I'm a third-class black citizen of this country. I don't deserve to be wealthy. Who am I to be wealthy? Black people aren't wealthy. I don't need black role models who are wealthy. I'd like that, but I don't subconsciously believe that's possible. So their self-image held them back, and they stopped them coming to learn anything. And this is when the light bulb went on, because I realized this is what I want to do with my life. I want to go and transform the mindsets of the South African culture. And ever since then, that's what I've been doing. I've been going back and I started leading seminars, going to South Africa leading seminars, sponsoring in people from the townships to do the seminars to transform their mindsets so that they can start to get the... And when I say the African culture and black people, I am generalizing hugely. I know I'm generalizing hugely because there's many black people who are very wealthy and who grew up with fantastic mindsets in a what we would call a privileged background, but that's the minority. And we're a country that is full of hope and a hugely colourful, amazing country. But what's inherently missing is the mindsets of the people haven't been addressed. You know, we have the skill sets there. Black people are empowered now to go out and study, and we've got black empowerment projects happening, and we're working to giving people the opportunities. But the mindsets haven't changed. You go into a township, you'll see the same old mindsets over and over and over and over. It's only the few people who really go-getters and self-starters will go out there and make it happen, right? There are so many people who are struggling and battling, wishing for a better life, not knowing how, and not knowing why they're still struggling. And it's because they haven't transformed their mindset. Their conditioning tells them that they're a third-class black citizen subconsciously. And they're not even aware of that. I mean it's so below the surface.
I mean, that could take generations to change,
it could take,
couldn't it?
Yeah, it could take. It could be, I mean, it's probably a lifelong journey for me. But it's got to start somewhere. And that's what I'm committed to. And that's what I realized my purpose of going there was. In living there, besides all the other benefits I got and the community got, it was really to get me on my life path of teaching people about the mind and how the mind works.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, I really, if there's anything that we can do or I can do that can support that, then I'd absolutely love to.
Thank you.
I mean, there's certainly questions that come out of that. Lots of little questions throughout the whole, but you're just giving me so much amazing information. But when you said right at the beginning that there's this belief that crime is only perpetrated by black people, how accurate is that? I mean, in where you lived.
Accurate. Very accurate.
Really? So white people didn't do crime?
They didn't need to. They had money.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it like that.
White people had money, black people had no money. So...
But there were lots of people in the township that didn't commit crime.
Yes.
Who didn't have money.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I mean...
Criminals, I mean, this is, you know, in today's age to say such a thing, you know, could sound so racist, and I don't mean it in a racist way at all, but the fact of the matter was, if you look at statistics, I would guess 99% of criminals were black. Right? And that's not because black people are criminals, that's because of the poverty, because of apartheid, because we've forced that upon them as the white South African government wouldn't allow these people to work in jobs. They had to be labourers. You know, they were farmed out to the townships to go and live in tin shacks, you know, and they worked in the mines, and the women were housekeepers, rearing young kids and ironing clothes and that kind of thing. So you imagine, as a young teenager growing up, as a black teenager, you've got no hope, no opportunity, you're being repressed, you're rebelling, you're angry, you know, and who cares about crime? You know, screw those white people, they're the bastards who've got us in this position in the first place, we're going to get revenge. And I mean, crime didn't only happen out of revenge, but it also happened because they needed money. So they'd steal cars, break in the house, steal jewelry, money, whatever they could, so that they could actually live the lifestyle that they dreamed of living at some point, which would obviously never happen in South Africa until apartheid ended. There were so many limitations on what black people were actually legally allowed to do and not to do. You know.
And within the township, and you were saying there are certain areas that were particularly dangerous. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the entire township was dangerous to a degree.
Yeah, certainly by European standards, yes.
Okay. And did you experience it that way?
No, not at all. I experienced it like being home, because everybody knew me. Because you know, it was hard not to know me because I was the only white guy there. So I was a friend, and I was welcomed, and I didn't want to get into even after I was mugged. I had to make a real conscious effort not to allow myself to fall prey to the trap of now being scared of the township. Yes. I had to consciously go, okay, that doesn't mean the township's a dangerous place. I need to keep my mind focused on being happy and enjoying it, and it was hard, and I battled. Because after I got mugged, I really was fearful, and I had to, not always successfully. I mean, there was a time where I spent weeks living in my recording studio, sleeping on the couch, because I was too scared to go home. I didn't want to go home. And partly why I didn't want to go home was I didn't want to be, this is the wrong word, but I'm going to use it because I can't think of a better one. I didn't want to be hassled by the locals coming up always wanting something from me. You know, my car would pull into my garage and suddenly there were 10 people. Vroom! Hi Bruce, how you doing? Come have a drink with us. Please can we have some money? Please can we have some dinner? I just want to go buy some food. Come with us to this bar, dragging me off. I've got this girl who I want you to meet. It was just like, I just had a hard day at work. All I wanted was just to go home. But in community, there's no privacy, right? When you're living that kind of community, you don't have a private life as much as you would, you know, in my city life. I could just lock up my door and go sit inside and watch TV. Yes. No, there were knocks at my door. Hey, are you in there? You got a television? Please can we come watch? The little 11-year-old kids, a group of 15 of them, would come pouring in, like anywhere between 3 and 11. And they'd come and they'd jump on my bed with me, and then we'd all watch TV together because they didn't have TVs in their house. And I had this little black and white TV about this big, and I let them watch television. And as much as I loved it, after a while, it was just like, I need my space too. So how I got my space was I actually ended up sleeping in my recording studio and spending the night there, going to the gym in the morning to shower in the city, and then going back to work. And there were often times, or I'd work late at night and go home late, and I'd get into the driveway and I'd open the garage as fast as I could, drive the car and run out and go into the house and lock the door, so that hoping nobody noticed I'd gotten home for a while. And then I realized what I was doing, and that the futility of that. Here I was, I'd actually come to get to know people, and now I was hiding from them. So it went from, I mean, it was a 6 months of extremes, of like, you know, being overwhelmingly happy to being terrified, to being mugged, to being supported and looked after. It was it was amazing.
What do you think, if any, the difference would have been if you had gone into the township without any of your extras? So if you'd, let's say, not looked wealthy, if you had taken a broken down car, if you'd not had a...
I did.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Oh, okay.
I had a 15-year-old car.
Yeah.
I had a small little television, but there was a lot more than they had, right? And I was white, so I was wealthy in their eyes, whether or not I actually had any money in the bank, yes, or not. Believe me, I didn't go in there flashing any wealth, because I knew I was going to get mugged and robbed. You know, if that was the case, I was so toned everything down. But I had clothes from nice shops. I had, you know, Calvin Klein clothes, which are nice clothes and brand names, where they would have cheap imported clothes from India, or whatever the case may be. You know, they make their own clothes, whatever the case may be. Or they'd have a really broken, beaten up car that had holes in the side and was rusting and falling people. Most people didn't have a car at all. But I was rich just because I was white, not necessarily because, I mean, yes, I could have been dead poor, but because I was white, yeah, the assumption was I was rich.
And do you think that the majority of the relationships that you formed there were as genuine as yours, or because you were white and therefore might be able to give them some money?
Say that again.
Well, there's sort of like two feelings.
Yeah.
That there's one sense that you were completely embraced,
yes,
because of your,
yes,
authenticity.
Yes.
And then another feeling that says that they came to you because of what you might be able to give them.
Yes.
That doesn't sound very authentic from their perspective. And I just wondered how much, whether you could sort of extricate the two. Were you embraced partly because of what you might be able to give them, or just different people
in the beginning,
having different experiences?
In the beginning, no. I was genuinely accepted, and I mean throughout the whole time I was genuinely accepted. And then there were people who certainly did want stuff from me, and I could feel it. They were like vampires, and I just would feel like they'd always be begging and asking me to get them a job. And I'd be going, why must I get you a job? This is your life.
Yeah.
You get you a job. How are you ever going to make anything in life if you can't even get up off your ass and go and find yourself a job? You know? I mean, if I just get you a job, I'm treating you like a victim. I'm assuming that you're this poor victim who can't get his own job, and I'm just perpetuating the victimhood. You know, I was very direct with him, and it was an incredible lesson in being direct and having to take a stand for something. because it was hard. Here were the people who welcomed me, and I had to turn a lot of them away and go, no, no, and really set boundaries, no, because they just would keep coming back and back and back, and I was like, at some point I had to yell at people, go away, no more, you know. And what was tragic for me was 2 months ago I was back in Guguletu, and Maureen, for the very first time, she'd never ever asked me for money for anything. In fact, I used to pay her money to look after my house when I'd come over to visit my wife who was living in the UK. While I was living in Guguletu, Adele was living in London. And 2 months ago, for the first time, she came up and asked me for money. And I could see the look in her eyes. She so didn't want to do it. You know, she so didn't want it. She's having a really tough time. And yeah, and it was the first time I gave her money, or anybody money after that week. And I gave her turnaround to help her out. And I got to go back there and find out what's going on in her life and really support this woman, because this woman looked after me like a mother. I mean, well, like a sister, should I say. She was a little bit older than me. Like a sister for 6 months. Anyway, those are the kind of things you have, and you know, the kind of experiences you have in such a poverty-stricken area.
So the people that rang you up when you were on the radio and came and stayed with you, did you pick them because of their level of authenticity? Because, I mean, did you get people that just thought, oh God, I fancy having a bit of that, and you know, that were inauthentic? I
just took everyone. I had 2 spare rooms in the house. I thought, if I can help contribute giving these people an authentic experience, because every time I brought somebody from the outside into the township, they walked away with a whole different perspective on life. Every time, without fail. Every time. I mean, every time I go to South Africa, I do that. 2 months ago, I took 14 people to Guguletu, and the transformation that occurred in the 4 hours that we were there, unbelievable. When people's prejudices just drop, because you've got to understand, these people are just like I was on day one. Terrified of being mugged, killed, terrified of black people, terrified, guilty as hell of how poor they are and how well off, how poor the black people are and how well off they are, and then the humbling experience of spending an afternoon in the township, realizing that the African people accept them just as they are anyway. They're just human beings, just like they are, have the same concerns, same issues. They're not criminals. They're just normal people, and to see at the end their faces light up, and I mean, they always come up to me afterwards and thank me no end for that. They're now living in a different country. It's like suddenly South Africa becomes a new world for them, having experienced that, and that they can walk down the streets and with less fear, with less prejudice. They may go up and speak to their housekeeper. I remember I was too afraid to speak to my housekeeper. Not afraid, I felt too guilty to really speak to my housekeeper, because I didn't really want to know about how bad her life was. This is when before I lived in the township. I didn't actually want to hear about it. I didn't want to have to accept that and let that into my world and have to look at, well, my life's so good and I'm not doing anything to help them. You know, I didn't even want to deal with that. So I wouldn't even talk to her. She'd come inside and say, hi, and she'd come and clean my house and be very superficial, hi, 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 and then she'd leave, you know, and because I felt so guilty.
So you take people into the township, and so are you saying it isn't dangerous when you take them in?
No, I'm not saying it isn't dangerous. I'm saying nothing will happen in that community. We are so protected in that community, and the people in that community would never allow anything to happen to any of us. They want the community to be promoted. They want white people coming. It's great business for them, because usually what ends up happening is I take them around to one of my friend's houses, who's an artist, and they go, oh, can I buy some of your paintings? And I go to the shebeens and we give them business, and then a band will start playing for us, and they'll get a nice big tip, and they make a lot of money out of the people I bring along as well. And B, they don't want white people thinking that the township's a dangerous place. They really want people to know that it's an amazing place. Now, I'm sure something could happen. Maybe an outsider could come in and there would be pickpocketing or something. It's very possible, and I'm sure it does happen. But what happens with tourists is tourists go and drive through like they're in a game park, in buses, peering out the window at the black people in the township, you know, peering out the bus windows. And it's like they don't get a genuine experience. They take them to the tourist shebeens and the tourist restaurants in the township, which are pretty much like any restaurant you'd get in the city, but it's just in a different location. It's not the authentic experience. What I do when I take my friends and people from my seminars who want to come along, I take them into just somebody's lounge with a real shebeen, and they may eat sheep heads that just been boiled, and I get the real taste of African life, purely because I want them to experience the joy of the township and realize that what an amazing place it is and what amazing people these people are, and get over their prejudices like I did. Because it wasn't the 6 months that got me over my prejudices, it was the first hour. It happened in an hour. It was just like every preconception or preconceived idea I had about this place got shattered and crumbled. It didn't take a long time,
It's such an incredible story, and I was just thinking as you were talking then about, do you know Kevin Allen, who's been nicknamed Banana Man, and he saw a documentary a few years ago, which I remember seeing, about the AIDS orphans of the Zulus in I can't remember the area,
KwaZulu-Natal, yeah.
I think it's there. And he was living in a little semi-detached house in Liverpool with his family, and just thought, this is appalling, I can't bear this. And I mean, he was far from rich, and but 6 days later he found himself out there with just things for kids in suitcases. He'd taken all his savings out of the bank and went to find these kids that he'd seen in this documentary. And he went into an incredibly dangerous area, not township type of area. Yeah. And I spoke to him the other day, because he now regularly goes out a couple of times a year, and he's now taking condoms out there and doing whatever he can. And I said, I'm so moved by what you're doing. Can I come with you? And he said, absolutely not. He said, I'm getting so many people wanting to come with me, and I'm absolutely not going to do it. So I said, why not? And he said, because I could be signing your death warrant, and I don't want to be responsible for you in there. He said, you drive in, if I've got 12 white people in a little van, I might as well have a great big bullseye on the front of it. So I went, okay, well that sounds far too scary, so I'm out of here, I'm not going to push that. But now that could be because they're two incredibly different areas.
You see, I don't buy that at all. I don't buy that at all. That's his prejudice. That's his bought into the fear. I would say, I don't even know who this man is, but I hear this all the time from particularly expat South Africans who are living in the UK. Oh, we couldn't go back, it's too dangerous. I'm like, bullshit. You get what you think about the most. If you're scared, you're going to attract stuff. The example I always use, my dad used to keep bees, and we would have to mow the lawn around the beehives, and we have to be very careful because the cut grass annoys the bees, and they'll come and they'll sting you. And also we'd have to get honey out of the hives, and if the bees know that you're scared, they can tell from a hormone that you release that you're scared. They come for you, boom, and attack you, because they know that you're scared. And then they get scared because they think, okay, why is this person scared? They're going to be attacking me. It's the same thing in life. If you're scared, you attract experiences to match that. And if you're going in with a heart open and you're going in lovingly, wanting to make a difference, nothing's going to happen to you. Nothing that wouldn't have happened to you anyway. I'm of the firm belief that if you're going to die, you're going to die. Whether it's being stabbed in a township or whether you're getting crashed by a car, that's your journey. Life doesn't happen by accidents. The universe, there are no accidents in the universe. It's perfectly orchestrated. And this mindset has really stood me in good stead when I go into those kind of places, because I just know I'm going out with an energy of love. And that's what I get back all the time, is an energy of love. I get to see the good side of things. Not that the bad side doesn't exist, I'm not in denial about that, but I choose not to focus my attention on that side. I choose not to focus on the crime. South African expats, South Africans are the worst. They always go, oh, the crime, it's so bad. The crime this, the crime that. Even South Africans in South Africa, the crime this, the crime that. And what do they attract? More crime. Yeah. And then they're justified, and you can't blame them for thinking that the crime's bad, because if that's what they're thinking about all the time, then that's what they get to experience in their life, then that's what becomes real for them. Now, I'm not saying there's no crime in South Africa or that there's not potential danger, but what I am saying is that you don't have to be in potential danger at all. I don't have a bullseye in my car. I drove into, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Tsotsi. It was a movie released last year, one of the first movie that ever won a Grammy. Is it a Grammy? No, Grammy's music. What is an Oscar. Yeah, first movie that ever won an Oscar out of South Africa. and they, I think, won Best Foreign Film or something. And they filmed it. It's all about the township life in this awful township, which by accident the other day, when I was in Johannesburg, I happened to drive through, taking a friend of mine to Soweto, to the Soweto township. I thought we'd go to our own township, so we didn't want to send a tourist bus. So I got my map out and we went driving. And we ended up in the middle of nowhere. Even I was scared. I mean, this wasn't even tarred roads. It was just, but shacks everywhere and gangster types looking like they were hanging around their shacks. And I got lost in the middle of this township. I needed to find the way to a restaurant we were going to go to. So I wound down the window and just really confidently said to the guy, "Hey, excuse me, can you tell me where this restaurant?" The guy looked at me going, "What the hell are you doing here?" You know, and he's just so sweet. He's 15 minutes inside the road, parked in the middle of the road, chatting to this guy. Da 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 da. He said, "Don't worry, you'll be fine here. You know, we'll look after you." And I track those experiences. So I don't buy that. I really don't buy that. And I think if you're scared, and there is that. And here's the other thing that's interesting being South African. As South Africans, we had to grow up in such, I wouldn't say a hardship, but it wasn't an easy life. We don't have NHS. We don't have a health service here. If you get sick, you go and pay for your medicine. If you don't pay for your medicine, you die. You know, whatever the case may be. We have a little bit of a wild west out there, and in the sense that I grew up having to deal with things that most people would never have to deal with ever in their whole life, and that would seem horrific to most people who've grown up in a first world culture. But in a sense, that's also kind of made us immune to it. And what would scare people a lot in a first world country, in South Africans are probably like, oh, whatever, you know, if we get hijacked, we get hijacked. One of those things. But I have friends who've been hijacked multiple times. You know, multiple times somebody stuck a gun through their car window and said, "Get out the car," and they take their car and they drive off in the car, you know, and they left on the side of the road and just, well, insurance will pay. You know, it's just like one of those things. But that's, you can choose to have that attitude about it, or you can choose to, you know, bitch and moan and go, "I'm leaving the country, this is too unsafe here." Because it's such a beautiful country with such beautiful people, and oh, don't get me started. I love South Africa.
Well, I feel a real draw to all of Africa. I always have done. I've not been to South Africa yet, but I've been to Kenya a couple of times. And I remember just being, in one of those bars on the beach in a hotel, and you know, it's just a real complete tourist place. And the girl that I was on holiday with, we were just chatting to the black guy who was bartender, and we were saying something like, "Oh, we love your country," and you know, we were doing that whole, we were just sort of in love with what we were saying. And he said, "Oh, well, that's really nice." He said, "But if you were white and you lived here," he said, "you'd change your mind." And I went, "Why?" And he said, "Because white people who live here do change their mind, and they might treat us really nice for the first couple of times they visit on holiday, and then they stop doing that." And we were just completely taken aback. But I do remember hanging out with some expats there, and their attitude was really unpleasant. I didn't like that attitude at all. And in the villa that we were staying at, we had a houseboy that lived on the premises and looked after us, and he was great. And you know, in the little sort of rules and regulations, it said, "Don't leave any of your belongings around because they'll get nicked." By the staff that these people knew. This was not in a hotel now, this was in a private home. Don't leave any of your jewellery around, put it in a locked box and all this sort of thing. And I thought, I can't be bothered to do that. I cannot believe that this man that looks after us would take my things. So of course he didn't. And I really liked him, and we really communicated, and I could tell that he really appreciated the fact that I treated him like and that I treated him like a human being. As soon as the owner of the house turned up, he came and stayed with us for a couple of nights. I couldn't believe the difference. This guy became scared and anxious and uptight, and the whole level of the way that this man spoke to him, really abruptly and coarsely, and I just thought, wow, I find that really hard to deal with. This is a human being. And I hope that had I ever become an expat, that I would have kept that. And I guess that there must be similarities in that attitude.
Definitely.
It was incredibly superior. It was just basically somebody to do what I tell you to do.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah. And the really interesting thing about the township and about any African country, I guess, is that I used to say to people, so what are your dreams and goals? Do you want to buy a house? Oh, I want to buy a house. Like, where do you want to buy it? Do you want to buy it somewhere by the beach? I said, no, buy a house here. Like, don't you want to go live in a nice area? I said, why would I want to do that? And live amongst white people with electric fences, where they don't talk to each other? Why would I want to go do that? And what I've heard happening and been reading in the newspapers is black people moving in, wealthy black people moving out of the townships, moving into nice areas, and then moving back into the townships afterwards.
Wow.
Realizing that there's just no community, there's no fun, nobody talks to each other. It's in the nice areas, and so moving back into the township where life happens.
That's
where
real
there's community,
isn't it? Real testament.
And because Africans have the African culture is very different from the Western culture. And I think Westerners come in thinking their culture is superior and thinking, well, we've got technology, we've got all this stuff, and these people have nothing. We must be superior. We have education. But a lot of them are absolutely happy where they are. And the ones that aren't happy where they are and they want to move on, they'll move on. But a lot of them aren't. Who are we to say that ours is better than theirs? And I think that's where that superior attitude comes from. It's like our cultures, we've got education. We're educated, therefore we're superior.
So out of interest then, I don't know whether you've ever seen a programme on TV which is The Secret Millionaire, where I saw about 3 of them recently, and there's somebody who's in England who's a millionaire, and they take him or her to a really poor part of the UK. It could be a really poverty-stricken area of whether it's London or Liverpool or wherever it might be. And this person is being filmed, so obviously being filmed, that's not secret. But they pretend that this person is there and that they're poor as well, and that they're to, I don't know, find out their roots or something like that. And the idea is that millionaire finds out a little bit about the community. I think they've got 10 days. And at the end of that, they choose a few people that they feel they want to financially support, and they give them some money. And they reveal who they are, and the smart suit goes on, and they go in and go, I'm actually not who you think I am, I'm actually a millionaire. And they go, like this, as if like millionaire is something amazing. But the point is that all the ones that I've seen, every single one of those people, whether it's a white community, an Asian community, whatever community it is that they go into, it's always poor, it's always got an incredible heart, and it is a community.
Yes.
They experience something different to what they used to.
Yeah.
And they make really strong friendships in a very short period of time. And they give to people, it might be people who need the money, but it's people who are in the process of really trying to help themselves. So there is charity, but it's sort of along the lines of what you were saying. And so the question that was coming out of all this is, do you think fundamentally there's any difference between the communities that might be black or the communities that might be white, if they all come from that space of like a cohesive community that comes out of poverty?
Yes, I think there would be cultural differences based on cultural beliefs and religious beliefs, but inherently the heart will be there. I mean, I'm sure you find in gypsy communities there's the same heart of community, because fundamentally human beings are wonderful, loving people. It's only the layers of programming, conditioning that we've piled on top of that keeps us from expressing that. But at the core, everybody wants to help, everybody wants to love, everybody wants to be loved.
Yes.
And that's certainly served me going through the township, remembering that all the time, that even if this person was aggressive to me, there was a reason, and they were just protecting themselves, or something had happened and they weren't able to express their love yet, but they were just as much wanting to love me as I was wanting to love them, and that attitude kept me safe.
Wow. So if you were to give a piece of advice to anybody, whether they're living in England or in South Africa, well, I'm not even sure what the question is really, but what's coming out of that is there's almost a sense of, oh my God, wouldn't it be better to be poor and be part of a community? And yet lots of us are involved in seminars that are about creating success and wealth. And I guess the question is something along the lines of, what advice can you give people or suggestions that allow them to have all of that, to be able to strive for success and wealth, and yet at the same time really feel community?
Well, it's about community. So I say go and find a community, whether it's going up and down your street and saying hello to every person in your street and introducing yourself and inviting them around for dinner and befriending your neighbors, which would, I mean, completely transform your life. I have no doubt if somebody did that and went and, had all their neighbors around for dinner and united the whole street. Can you imagine? I mean, that just doesn't happen.
No.
The whole street get together in someone's house and they have a dinner party and they get together and get to know each other. So we won't start. Or, people find themselves drawn to communities of similar interests. So whether it's a business community of business people, or around a sport, there's a community, a team, or we get our community needs met in other ways, if not always around living around people. And I'm not saying living in community is better than living in isolation either. It's just different. I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying it's different because, given a choice of living in my nice house over here or living in the township, I'd have to choose both because I enjoy them both.
Yes.
This is great. I wouldn't want to live in the township forever. It would drive me mad, right? I wouldn't want to live isolated here forever. It would drive me mad too. I just miss the heart of Africa. It's just, I think the message I'm getting across here is that if you've grown up in isolation and you don't talk to people, you're missing out on an amazing part of life. You're missing out on connecting with people. You're missing out on experiencing different cultures, learning things and growing in ways you could never imagine as a human being, as a man or a woman. That can only happen, I think, through feedback from other people in community, through allowing other people into your life who are close enough, who care about you, allowing other people to care about you enough that they can contribute and make a difference. So that's really what this is all about. And what I say to people is, go, if you haven't met your neighbors yet, go and say hello to them. And go and find out who they are and have them around for dinner. And it doesn't mean you have to hang around with them every night, but you'll learn something. And for me, that's what it was. It was a learning experience in the end. I'm not saying it's better or worse. It isn't. It's just different. Some people's preference is to live in community and other people's preference is not. But until you've tried it, you'll be missing out on a part of life that's bright and bubbly and just full of so many rewards,
It also feels to me like you're saying that it's really valuable not just to meet your neighbours, let's say, and not necessarily just to get involved in a community of like-minded people, but to actually cross a cultural bridge wherever you can in order to recognise or experience that there's just as big a heart in that person. And
to find the commonality in a different culture.
Yes.
And I guess that's what I meant. I wasn't saying it. That's what I meant when I say go speak to your neighbour. The reason I say neighbours is we have Portuguese neighbours. So they're an ethnic minority in the street here. And so one of the first people I made a point of going to meet was them. So it's about getting to know people you wouldn't normally meet and learning about their culture.
Oh no!
Especially if there's fear in it. This is. I'm getting clearer as I'm speaking it now. It's easy to get to know any culture. The cultures that are hard to get to know are the ones you're scared of.
Yes.
Like going to speak to a Black American gangster, that would be scary for most people. Or going to speak to a Muslim person would be scary for a lot of people who didn't understand the Muslim culture and who, perhaps if you're American and you've bought into the whole terrorist thing, Muslim people may be scary. And just go and break those bridges and realize that, break those boundaries and build the bridges and realize that everybody's human, everybody's the same.
So, I know we could really easily close there, but there's just another question I want to ask you. Have you ever thought about going to check out, say, Harlem in New York?
I have. I've never been to. No. I've thought about it. I've never been to New York yet. So, I have no doubt I will. We're moving to the States in the next year. So, I've no doubt that that'll happen. I'd love to, and I have a feeling I'm going to feel really comfortable there, because after Guguletu, everything else is a breeze.
You know, all this time though, like the last 5 minutes, I've just been seeing this sort of series of documentaries unfold. And if I had the money, I'd be talking to you about this now. But can you imagine if there's somebody that wanted to fund
what an idea.
You doing a different hour-long documentary, a series of them in different parts of the world, going in exactly like you did in South Africa and really experiencing those communities that scare most people. You know, doing really different ones. And I just think,
that's a great idea.
Oh, I hope somebody's listening and that would do that, because that would be fantastic. And you've just got that attitude that really embraces that step, that jump, that leap.
I'd love to do that. That's a great idea. Actually, I could see it.
I really like that.
Going into the poorer areas of the world that most westernized people would never dream of going into.
Yes.
And exposing the heart of the area rather than what's wrong with it. Actually focusing on what works and what's right with it.
Nice title, Exposing the Heart.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Ooh.
Who knows?
Ooh, I can feel something coming together. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Bruce. I just really appreciate the whole story and the heart behind it and the passion with which you share that.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's my favourite story to tell, and I've told it many times, and I love telling it because every time I tell it, it's like I go back there, and I get that feeling back of being there and living there. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
It's a pleasure. I just remembered one more question.
Okay, go.
Which is, if anybody listening or watching this, wants to come and experience a township with you, what would they need to do?
Well, what I usually do is when I lead seminars in South Africa, which is twice a year, I lead my Design Life seminars there, I make an offer to the participants in the audience and I say to them, this is in Cape Town, I'm going to the township on such and such a date. If anybody wants to experience the African culture and overcome their fear, you're welcome to join me. Go speak to somebody at the back of the room, put your name on a list. They're not formally organized things that I do. It's literally meet us here on this corner and we'll jump into 3 cars and we'll just drive out there for the day, and I phone them up in Guguletu and say, hey, I'm coming, I'm bringing out 10 friends, are you guys going to be there? And say, oh yeah, we're here, and then we just go and hang for an afternoon. We go walking around and go and see the children's creche, and sometimes we've been at the end of been bands playing in the local shebeens, and walk around and see the dilapidated houses and see the shacks and the shanty town, and to take somebody into a shanty town, into a shack for the first time and see this is where somebody lives. There's a mattress on the floor, there's a little fireplace, there's a little cupboard, and they've got electricity running off some house 500 meters down the road with a long extension cable, and they live in this little shack, and perhaps there's no toilet, the toilet's down the road. And to give people an experience of that, and to taste the food and drink the beer and wine out there, and talk to the people, more importantly, and meet these people. So yeah, if you're in Cape Town and my seminars are on, come along, and you could email me, and in fact you could even email me. Just email me at info@designer-life.com and I'll put you on a list. And if you're in Cape Town, I can just send you an email saying we're going on this day and you're welcome to come.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bruce.
My pleasure. Thanks for interviewing me.
Pleasure.